Hey everyone, welcome to Question Period Rewind. I'm Donna Skelly, the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly of Ontario. Let's go back to 1986. That's the year when the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducted its first batch of musicians. Among them, the iconic Ray Charles, Buddy Holly, and of course, Elvis Presley. Tina Turner was also receiving praise in California, where her star on Hollywood's Walk of Fame was revealed. And if you turned on the radio, there's a good chance you'd hear Madonna's #1 hit, Papa Don't Preach. But now, let's tune into the conversations the MPPs were having in Question Period.
Oral questions. The Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, in the absence of the Softwood brothers, I have a question for the Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs. My question for the Minister is this. We noted in the Globe and Mail this morning that the Premier was trying to run quickly from the inaction of his colleagues on the softwood lumber issue. And we looked back at last Thursday's Hansard. At that time, the Minister of Industry and Trade said, quote, "Our officials have been working very closely with Ms. Carney, and we feel we have had a lot of input." How does the Premier reconcile that statement, which I remind the Premier was made 2.5 weeks after the federal minister indicated her willingness to accept the 10% surcharge? How does he reconcile that statement with his attempts to suggest that his government was snookered on this issue?
Premier?
Well, Mr. Speaker, in my capacity as the Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, I'm very happy to respond to the honourable member's question. Just by way of preamble, I should tell you that the two ministers are at this very moment meeting with Mrs. Carney and other federal industry and provincial officials with respect to developing some sort of a coordinated response. I don't see the discrepancy that my honourable friend would point out. I mean, it was very clear to us and to others when those discussions were going on of the Ontario view on the situation. And the view was, and the advice we gave and to those councils was not to negotiate that particular situation. That's clear. Now, you'll be aware that Mrs. Carney went to Washington, announced to the world that she was prepared to negotiate the situation, and it came as a complete surprise to Ontario officials, and I assume to a variety of others. Clearly, the industry officials, a number of industry officials as well, weren't aware of this. Now, then there were subsequent meetings, and in the interests of presenting a united front and not a divided front, Ontario went along. But I don't want you to get an erroneous impression of what transpired over that period of time.
Supplementary.
Clearly what happened over that period of time was Ontario perhaps objected at first to the suggestion that there be an offer, but ultimately, instead of speaking for Ontario, instead of fighting hard against the imposition of a tariff which would cost more jobs in Northern Ontario than a lottery office in Sault Ste. Marie will create, you went along. You decided to go along. Now, my supplementary question to the Premier is this. Your minister indicated yesterday that you were prepared now to fight what you endorsed a couple of weeks ago. With that in mind, could you tell me the details of the major meeting that was held on this very question yesterday, what it was about, and who represented Ontario at that meeting in Washington yesterday?
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, I don't believe that Ontario did not have a representative at a meeting in Washington yesterday, if in fact there was one in Washington. There were meetings here in Toronto yesterday with officials represented by the deputy ministers of natural resources and industry and trade, industry representatives. There were, in fact, meetings this morning, additional from the same officials, I believe, and this afternoon the ministers are meeting. So there are ongoing meetings with respect to this particular issue.
Final supplementary.
Well, I am shocked that after the hand-wringing that the minister went through yesterday about this problem and assuring everyone that he would fight hard to reverse his earlier decision, the Premier would rise today and indicate that no one spoke for Ontario. No one was there yesterday representing Ontario's interests at a key meeting in Washington. Let me tell the Premier the meeting that he and his trade minister
By way of
and their
supplementary, I hope.
officials missed. Yesterday was a disclosure conference at the International Trade Commission offices in Washington to give the factual basis upon which they reached their decision. That would allow you and your trade minister, forgive me, you and your trade minister, to mount the case to defend Ontario's interests and point out that the 10% levy should not, the 15% should not be put in place. So after having assured the House yesterday again that you're going to fight it, you did absolutely nothing. You didn't even go and get the basic information upon which you could protect Ontario's interests.
Question.
My question, therefore, is this. Could you explain to the House why it was yesterday, at this major disclosure meeting in Washington, that you didn't even arrange for a single Ontario official to be there
Premier,
to get the details
order.
which would allow you to present it?
I haven't got a clue what's going on.
Show you how to ask the question.
I say with great respect to my friend opposite, who obviously will want to take his views to his federal kissing cousins who have been in charge of carriage on this matter. And you will want to do that and discuss it with Mrs. Carney, who's in town this afternoon. But I say that's what the silliest suggestion I have heard from you in a long time. The meetings were here yesterday with industry officials and with other federal officials and others. They're meeting again today. You know, we've got copies of the judgment that was brought down by the ITC, and I think if you and Candor should probably stand up in this House and apologize for what some of your members were saying yesterday about quoting only parts of the judgment. On page, I believe, 17 of that judgment, it said that Ontario was the only province that did provide full information. And one of your members inadvertently, I'm sure inadvertently, the one that's wagging his head, inadvertently gave incorrect information to this House yesterday. And I think he would want to stand up and say that Ontario was the province that was forthcoming in this particular regard and carried its case extremely well. Well, I can tell you something. This case has been well handled by our officials. They're in charge of it. They are on top of the situation on a daily basis. I regret the way this thing has turned out. But I think you want to take some of your suggestions to your federal brethren.
New question. New question, the Leader of the Opposition.
You will recall the Prime Minister of the country, who you were lauding so generously as bringing Canadians together. Of course, you were in Tokyo at the time. But I want to invite the Premier to get his staff, each of whom earn at least $57,000 a year, of course, to get a copy of this before the end of question period and send over page 17, and we'll have an opportunity to see whose information is correct. My second question to the Premier, with regard to defending Ontario's interests, is this. We know that the United States is entering into even more steps with regard to defending themselves against imports from a lot of countries, including Canada. I wonder if you could tell us specifically what representations your government, the Ministry of Intergovernmental Affairs or the Ministry of Trade, have made with regard to the Heinz-Murtha bill.
Premier.
Mr. Speaker, you attacked me in this House for being generous or complimentary of one of my peers in this country. It would serve you well to have a generous thought about someone somewhere in this country at some time. I'm one of those people that believes in being constructive where one can possibly be constructive, not destructive on all occasions, as seems to be your particular want. let me say, Mr. Speaker, we're very much aware of what's happening in the United States. I was talking with Mr. Clark just a few moments ago before I came into the House with respect to Ontario initiatives. We're very concerned about the potential impact on Ontario of that. As you know, it would be substantial. I can tell you we are making our views known on that particular subject. If you're telling me to stand up and shout and scream the way you want to do, I think the honourable member isn't being all that constructive.
That's your Hugh O'Neill imitation.
Supplementary.
Might I say to the Premier, I take his advice, and I want this afternoon to laud Mr. John Turner for his continuing support of freer trade negotiations in light of the recent developments, and I invite you to join in supporting all Canadians who want to negotiate so that these kinds of things don't happen. I laud Mr. Turner. You should take his advice once in a while.
Premier?
Now, my question to the Premier is this.
Was that not your supplementary?
There was not even close to an interruption.
Oh, I was listening carefully.
That's what it was in response. You allow one, you allow the other.
Order. 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 Supplementary.
Question to the Premier is this. He's assured us a moment ago, as if he knew what the bill was all about, that he was going to protect Ontario's interests. Could he outline for us which interests he thinks are under attack and threatened by the Heinz-Murtha legislation?
Mr. Speaker, first of all, you invited me to comment on Mr. Turner's approach to free trade. And I'm very interested in hearing of your new approach, Mr. Speaker, because this is a man that's changed his mind about 3 times on free trade now. And your position is different than members of your committee. I mean, your problem is none of you, particularly you, are credible on these issues because you keep changing your mind. Let me tell you, when Ontario speaks on the trade issues, Ottawa listens, as do the other provinces, and they don't on you. Mr. Speaker, as I said, I can't add to the former answer I gave to the minister. You heard the minister speak yesterday about the question of the imposition of a flat import duty in the United States, and we are discussing that with others, as well as making representations to the extent that this province has a voice in Washington.
Final supplementary.
The United States Congress has been invited by the Heinz-Murtha bill to slap serious additional quotas on key Canadian products. You don't even know what the bill is. You've taken no action, and you don't even have the decency this afternoon to stand up and say you're going to request some information and go to fight it. If you won't do that, will you, I repeat the question, will you stand up this afternoon and say, in spite of your protestations, that you are going to defend Ontario's interests? You candidly don't know what the Heinz-Murtha legislation is, that you haven't taken any steps to inquire after it, and a good period of time after it's been introduced, your Minister of Trade has not acted on it. Stand up and tell us
Premier?
what the Heinz-Murtha legislation is, or tell us you've done nothing about it.
You know, Mr. Speaker, I must say I find the honourable member's approach in this House rather strange. He's not particularly interested in any information. He's interested in dragging people down to his level, and I'm not prepared to do that. You know where we're standing on these issues. You know what's been done. You know the public statements by the minister and myself in this matter, and we'll continue to do that.
What could be
New question. New question, the member for York South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have some questions today for the Minister of Health. I'd like to ask the Minister some questions relating to the report of the Nursing Home Residents Complaints Committee, which bears the date of March 1986, but which was suppressed by the Minister until its publication in September. I'd like to ask the Minister, was the reason the report was suppressed and released until he felt he had some good news to report the fact that the report stated, for example, that the committee has found some homes that spend as little as $2.10 per day on food And can the minister tell us how this expenditure on food per day compares either with a general hospital or with what the Ministry of Correctional Services regards as acceptable in its detention centers?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I cannot tell the honourable gentleman what the comparison is. I know that all of us are concerned by that aspect of the report, and I would indicate to the members here an expenditure of $2.10 per patient or resident per day is not an acceptable level. The report, I think, was quite interesting from several standpoints with respect to the overall industry, and I can tell the honourable gentleman that it has been very helpful from my standpoint as an internal document and for the people who have seen it since its release.
Supplementary?
Speaker, it's not an internal document, and you suppressed it, Minister. You suppressed it for a period of months because it contained some bad news that you didn't want people to hear. You know that. Everybody knows it. It's time somebody blew the whistle. Just for the minister's information, Mr. Speaker, the Toronto General Hospital, October 86, spends $5.28 per day per patient. Ontario jails, detention centres, and correction centres spend $4.29 per day per resident of those institutions. I'd like to ask the minister, given this appalling contrast in comparison between a hospital and the nursing home figures which were released by Dorothea Crittenden in her report, would the minister care to comment on the following quotation from that report? In a profit-oriented system, operators are motivated to decrease costs, in this case food, staff, time, luxuries, etc., in order to increase or maintain their profit margin. As a result, many aspects of the industry do not reflect the expectations of Ontario society in 1986. Is that the reason that you suppressed the report for 6 months?
Mr. Speaker, I didn't suppress the report, and the honourable gentleman ought to know that the report also goes on to indicate that the industry does have some very fine examples of people who provide top-quality care. And I think you would also want to indicate that that is part of that report as well. I can tell you that I'm concerned about the parts of that report that indicate very strongly that there are very large concerns about the manner in which some facilities carry on. There is no question that that is a concern to us, and that's the reason why we're moving to change the way in which the nursing home industry is administered. The indication that we are going to have people who will be acting as consultants solely, and others who will be looking at ways of enforcing the legislation is a clear indication of our commitment to ensuring that we have a role to play in upgrading the way that these facilities are operating, and in fact we will continue to do that. I can tell you that there are some concerns, but I also must say that having spoken with with Dorothea Crittenden, that in fact that she has indicated that there are some very good performers inside that system as well, and I know that you would want to indicate that clearly to the people of the province as well.
Mr. Speaker, the report was suppressed by the minister. He had it in his hands in March of 1986. He released it as part of a good news package, so-called, in September of 1986. I think it's time the public knew what was in this report. It's a devastating critique of our nursing home industry. It's a devastating critique of the quality of life that seniors are being subjected to in many of these institutions that are run on a private profit basis. The minister knows it. He sat on the report. He suppressed it. He did not release the information. Those are the facts, and they're on the record. I'd like to ask the minister, is he aware of the fact that the report states that the average found by Mrs. Crittenden for nursing homes was between $2.50 and $2.60, and just what does he intend to do to ensure that residents who are living in nursing homes are not subject to these sub-standards, to these standards which are below a quality of life which any reasonable person in Ontario would expect? What does he intend to do about it? And how does he justify, Mr. Speaker, the suppression of this information, together with many other clear-cut criticisms of the way in which this so-called industry is being run at a time when his government says we're an open government, we're a sunshine government, we want to help seniors. You sat on a report for 6 months and you did nothing about all the evidence.
Mr. Speaker,
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable leader of the third party is wrong. In fact, we have moved to deal with several of the items in there. That document has been of use, and we have put together several responses to that, and we are still continuing to work with amendments to the Nursing Home Act. And I can tell you that, Mr. Speaker, the people of the province will be proud of the nursing home operations that we are amending. We are moving forward with many of the incentives, I think, to make sure that, in fact, the people who are cared for in our nursing homes are cared for well. And I can tell you that our commitment is no less than that. It is also, Mr. Speaker, a commitment of this government to see what we can do to help people remain in their homes as well. And we're going to deal with this question, this very sensitive question, on many, many fronts, and we won't give up or let up our activities. We are committed to improving the lot of our seniors.
New question, the member for York South.
Speaker, I'd like to ask a question to the minister with respect to the continuation of extra billing and other practices by individual members of the medical profession. Mr. Speaker, recently our office received a call from a Mr. Gord Lake of Stouffville, who felt that his wife, Audrey, was being refused surgery, or at least was being treated in a different way because the doctor said he could not extra bill for the operation. Now, this charge was sufficiently serious that my office phoned the doctor directly to inquire as to precisely what had gone on. I'd like to tell the minister that the doctor stated that he would receive about $450 for a cataract operation, but only about $240 for the implant surgery, which he described as an operation of equal risk, and therefore he said he would not do the surgery, that is to say, the implant surgery, because he felt that it would, quote, only make her more comfortable. Mr. Speaker, when we asked the doctor involved
Question, please.
as to whether he would do it if OHIP were to pay $450, he told my staff, and I quote, it would be reasonable to do it for a higher price. End of quote. He also said he knew of several doctors who are refusing to do so-called low-price surgery. I'd like to ask the minister, is he aware of the situation described by this doctor where certain doctors are declining to do surgery because they feel that it is not sufficiently lucrative for them to do it?
Mr. Speaker, there has been some indication over the past several years, and it hasn't changed over the last several months, that some practitioners are concerned about the level of benefits as they are set out under the OHIP plan. I am not aware of any physician who has specifically said until now that he or she will not perform surgery that is medically required on that basis alone. Perhaps the honourable gentleman could tell us when he made these inquiries and at how long ago that has been, so that we could perhaps check into it. By this time, I'm not sure, but maybe by this time we could be of some assistance in finding some other referral physician who would take on the medical procedure. I just don't know. I don't have enough of the facts to really go much further with this particular inquiry. But if the honourable gentleman could share with us in a timely manner some of these examples, it would help us, I'm sure, to deal with the needs of the patients. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the information is being gathered by my office all the time. The minister will appreciate that it is of a sensitive nature, and he will also appreciate that obviously no doctor is going to say, I'm refusing to perform a medically necessary operation because of the money involved. What I am saying is, and what appears to be the case in this instance, is that a doctor is saying that the way in which he practices medicine is being determined by the fees which he is receiving, and that is something which causes me very deep concern. I think it should cause the minister concern. Mr. Speaker, by way of supplementary, I wonder if the minister could comment on the letter which is sent to patients by Dr. Lorne M. Tarshis in Toronto, which states that he does not deal directly with OHIP, but will deal directly with patients. OHIP allows a physician, I'm quoting, Mr. Speaker, to charge patients directly for, quote, non-insured services. Dr. Tarshis's fees include this charge. You will be responsible for payment of Dr. Tarshis's fees, but if this presents any financial hardship, please discuss the matter and the account will be adjusted accordingly. Payment of this account would be appreciated at the time of your visit to the office or following the rendering of the services. I wonder if the minister would care to comment on the practice of doctors who put all the administrative fees in one bundle and then say that these fees will be charged to patients, and the only basis upon which they will be removed is if patients get down and start having a financial discussion with their patients.
Well, Mr. Speaker, again, I must ask the honourable gentleman to share with us when this information came to his attention. If we're to deal with these incidents, which I think he is alleging are causing difficulties for patients, we must do so in a timely manner. Yesterday, the honourable gentleman read to us from a letter which he received July 16th and was unable to bring to my attention until yesterday. That's a suppression of a kind that I think, Mr. Speaker, we would have some concern with. It seems to me, Mr. Speaker, that the honourable gentleman knows full well that when there are patients in difficulty, that I myself would like to know about it in a timely fashion. I don't think it's appropriate when people lump things together that they do not provide some detailed information for these people so that they can determine exactly what is happening. Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman knows that that is the case, and I will look into those situations if he can provide for me in a timely manner some disclosure of these items.
Final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the minister knows perfectly well that he has got correspondence from members of our party going back until August, which he has failed to respond to. He knows perfectly well, and if he doesn't believe me, we can document it for him. He knows perfectly well that there are patients today. The instance that I raised in my first question was a case that was brought to our attention this week, a case which we discussed with the doctor this week. And I say to the minister,
please ask the minister.
Is he aware of the fact that there are literally countless examples of doctors practicing in the province of Ontario who are, as a matter of routine, insisting on administrative fees as a matter of right in terms of the care that they will give, that there are obstetricians who are, as a matter of general practice and as a matter of general rule, insisting on a so-called standby fee which does not offer any guarantee with respect to service. Is he aware of those facts? They're taking place today, right here in the province of Ontario, today, October the 21st, 1986.
Order. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I am aware of the examples that have been brought to my attention, and we wish to pursue them, and I invite those examples to keep coming. I know that there are examples which have been brought to my attention by various members, and we respond to those. Mr. Speaker, I am aware of those. The honourable gentleman knows that we will look into each of those situations, and I can tell the honourable members here, Mr. Speaker, and the public that we are addressing through our meetings with the association, the OMA, and also with the college, these types of situations which indicate that there is no clear definition of what is being charged for, how they're being charged for, and it seems to me, Mr. Speaker, that when we have the detailed information that is necessary to proceed against those, that we will take the necessary steps. And I thank the honourable gentleman and all of the members here for bringing to my attention these items. But I must say that there has to be timely disclosure so that we can work away, and full disclosure so that we can work at this to protect the patients.
New question. The member for Cochrane South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to pose a question to the Premier, and it has to do with the softwood lumber issue in the United States and here in the province of Ontario. The Premier will be aware from his recent study of this issue that going back to 1962, the chief complaint in the United States Congress and to the International Trade Commission emanated out of the practices, the stumpage practices and crown dues practices of British Columbia. He will be aware that Senator Packwood was instrumental in having the Committee on Ways and Means request of the International Trade Commission in 1982 to do an investigation and have public hearings in this matter in Portland, Oregon, with a specific emphasis on the Pacific Northwest and the British Columbia stumpage practices, and that complaint is the major complaint today by the American producers. My question to the Premier is, would he not agree, and I acknowledge it's in hindsight, would it not agree that it was a mistake for Ontario to link itself to the British Columbia position? Would it not have been wiser for Ontario, whilst arguing the Canadian case that there was no subsidy in stumpage policies, to protect itself and claim an exemption for producing companies in Ontario because we do not have the same nature of policies that British Columbia does?
Yeah, raises an interesting question. He will be aware that our stumpage is roughly double that of the stumpage in British Columbia and in Quebec as well. And I'm aware that since the majority of the exports come out of the Northwest, out of British Columbia, that the majority of the attention was in that particular area. We are second, roughly equal exports with Quebec, even though Quebec has substantially lower stumpage than we do. Now, the question is, in national terms, because these things are not directed against particular provinces, they're directed against countries, as you know. What was the best approach in this matter? Mrs. Carney had carriage of this matter, as well as the federal officials, and you can second-guess the decision and say, look, maybe we should have gone with 2 or 3 different positions into the United States, or you can say that we should have gone with the United position. I suspect, had we gone with a divided opinion, you would have been the first to stand up in this House and castigate us on the approach that was taken. Our approach, very frankly, is where possible to deal on a national basis, to give the best advice that we possibly can, and we did do that, let me assure you. But when things happen, like policies are announced in Washington by Mrs. Carney, unbeknownst to us, that obviously puts pressure on the situation. But I know the honourable member, as a former minister and having spent some time on this issue, is knowledgeable on this issue. And what I would hope that you would do is that you would use the great credibility you have in this House as a former minister and as an outstanding member of the Progressive Conservative Party to phone Mrs. Carney and tell her exactly what you've told me and give her some advice in this matter.
Mr. Premier, I'd be happy to try and do your job for you if you don't feel you can do it.
Go back to the opposition, David, if you can't do it.
Mr. Speaker,
Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, I would refer the Premier to page 67 of the decision and indicate to him that he's obviously unaware of the suspension of liquidation provisions that are available to anyone who appears before the International Trade Commission. My question was why you didn't take part, why you didn't avail yourself of those provisions and help Ontario workers and Ontario industries. My question to you is, because you opted to go along with British Columbia and Quebec, can you tell us, in that national consensus that you went along with, what proportion of the burden of the 8 to 10% solution is going to fall on Ontario workers and Ontario industries? Did you make a specific deal that Ontario would be exempt from the burden of that 8 to 10% solution?
Premier.
The member, in the interest of causing a political fuss, is making a bunch of assumptions in his statements, as is his leader, that frankly are not particularly valid in the circumstances. I mean, you're entitled to second-guess what's been done, but don't for a minute pretend that what you're saying is the truth in these particular matters, or it would have absolutely happened, because you're quite wrong in the circumstances. And I know exactly what you would say to me if we had taken different approaches in this matter. We gave the very best advice we could possibly give. But no one can say for sure what that indication of Mrs. Carney had making to the cabinet minister in the United States, what effect that had on the ITC. We are studying that judgment in great detail. The advice that we are getting is that it is flawed, that it's flawed legally, and that there are ways that can be attacked. Now, our approach is to attack that legally, diplomatically, in every single way that we possibly can. It is not our approach to try and negotiate a solution to this, in a sense, admit guilt. What we have to do is fight this thing because we believe it is wrong. And that is the advice we are taking to the federal representatives, to the other province and others. And I think my honourable friend, who used to have some friends in the industry and used to know them reasonably well, should avail himself of all the facts and the circumstances and talk to the industry and talk about the role that Ontario played in this particular matter. And I think that they will tell you, the ones that know the issue even better than you did. You were their lackey in 1983 when you went down there. You were doing the case that they were suggested to you. You were carrying their message. You were acting for them. You weren't acting for the government. And let me tell you this.
Order. New question. Order. Can't hear. New question, the member for Hamilton East.
I have a question of the Premier of Ontario. The Premier has received a large number of letters from steel workers, auto workers, and other union members concerning a potential flaw in early retirement pensions for workers in the province. The modification of the Canada Pension Plan to allow for early retirement at age 60 can be totally negated if early retirement benefits in existing private plans are able to take advantage of this incentive by reducing the private bridging benefits dollar for dollar. This can destroy the incentive for early retirement, which opens up employment and creates more enjoyment in the golden years. Is the Premier prepared to respond positively and quickly to end this particular loophole in the plans?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the letters you talk about I have not seen. That may very well be the case. As you know, I get thousands of letters, but I will take the point that the honourable member raised in this House under advisement, and I will review all the aspects with the minister responsible and the treasurer, and share the information, that review with you.
Supplementary.
Well, I would hope that the Premier's staff will show him some of the hundreds and probably thousands of letters that have been sent to him on this particular issue. And Mr. Premier, do you not agree that Ontario should offer at least the same protection to its workers that the province of Quebec did when it brought in such protective legislation in conjunction with similar modifications to the Quebec Pension Plan in 1984?
Premier.
Doing the entire matter of pensions at the present time, and you'll be seeing legislation in the not-too-distant future. If you're asking me whether we should have the same legislation as Quebec in all regards, the answer probably is no. They're now looking at Ontario to do some of the things we're doing here. I think we have to tailor our situation, our solutions to the individual situation here. But I will, as I said, take the point you make under advisement and share the results of our review with the honourable member.
The Minister of Municipal Affairs. Order. Order. The Minister of Municipal The Minister of Municipal Affairs has a response to a question previously asked by the member for Sudbury East.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, in response to the question asked from the member for Sudbury East concerning the sale of leased lots on Fairbank Lake by Falconbridge, I want to reiterate my previous answer. As the legal landowners, Falconbridge Limited has the right to subdivide and sell lots subject to the Planning Act approval given by the regional municipality of Sudbury. The authority to approve plans of subdivision in Sudbury was delegated to the regional municipality of Sudbury on August the 1st, 1978. The approval of the Falconbridge subdivision is entirely within the jurisdiction of the region, and my ministry has no direct involvement or authority in this matter.
Supplementary.
When Falconbridge and other mining companies own hundreds of thousands of acres in the province, is this government prepared to remove the surface rights from the companies when we're talking about mines patents, so that in fact they only have the mineral rights, and where there's not going to be any surface work, they do not have the right to that, since in fact when we even try to open a dump up in the north, we have to get permission from the mining companies. Are you prepared to remove that right if they don't need the surface rights for mining purposes?
Hear, hear. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've already spoken to the Minister of Natural Resources about this problem. This problem was started some 50 years ago when the previous government, when the government at the time, gave those mines the right, Mr. Speaker, to subdivide these lands. But I am talking with the Minister of Natural Resources on that problem.
New question, the member for Brampton.
Mr. Speaker, it's an important question about my riding, Mr. Martel. Can I ask it? Mr. Speaker, about a month or 2 months ago, the Minister of Health, in announcements regarding new health facilities, indicated that allotted some 380 acute care beds for the region of Peel and 200 chronic care beds. These acute care beds, Mr. Speaker, in the city of Brampton, Hill Memorial Hospital still requires 120 beds to complete its acute care allocation. All of these matters were subject to the District Health Council reporting to the Minister. That report was to be received sometime in October. I'd like to ask, through you, Mr. Speaker, to the Minister, have we received the report from the District Health Council on that item yet?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member for his question. I think that it is important for all of us to understand that the process of planning for the institutional revitalization of our hospital sector has been progressing, I think, on par with what we had hoped. All of the health councils have indicated that they will be meeting their objective of reporting back to me by the end of October, and I am expecting very shortly a number of reports with respect to allocation of those resources among communities. I would have to say to the honourable gentleman, however, that I'm not aware at this point that the recommendations of the council in his area have come to the ministry. I will check on that to see if it has been received in the last few days and get back to him with that advice.
Supplementary?
Mr. Speaker, in addition, at the same time the Minister indicated that there might well be an innovative health facility in that area. We have, in fact, embarked upon a consultation report which was referred by the Shinkuzi Health Services Board to the District Health Council. That, again, was subject to some comment by the District Health Council of the Minister. I'd like to inquire whether or not that report is in yet.
Mr. Speaker, I'm at this point unable to advise the honourable gentleman of exactly what the Health Council has taken into consideration, although I'm sure that they are quite willing and probably did take into account several proposals around their area of planning authority, and I would suspect that probably that was one of the items which came to their attention. The recommendations, I'm unable today to tell the member the extent of. I just cannot do that, but I will check into it and see what the status of that report to me is, and then get back to the member so that he may have some idea of the time frame within which the ministry will be making response.
New question? The member for Sarnia.
In the absence of the Minister of Natural Resources, who's undoubtedly working out a new position on the softwood lumber industry with his colleague, the Minister of Industry and Trade, Mr. Speaker, I'll address my question to the Minister of Municipal Affairs. The Minister is undoubtedly aware of the extensive damage that has recently occurred as a result of high water levels in the Great Lakes system. That damage has included extensive cost and erosion to shorelines. Some roads have, in fact, had to be completely abandoned in my own municipality. There have been a great number of costs associated with the damage that's been done, and while all this has been going on, we have been waiting somewhat patiently for your ministry, in concert with Natural Resources, to give some kind of response to individuals and municipalities that have experienced this extensive cost related to the high water levels. Could you indicate today, sir, what your ministry is prepared to do to undertake some form of cooperative partnership with municipalities to assist them in these tremendously high costs associated with the recent high water levels that we have just experienced and which we can anticipate we will be experiencing in the future as well?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, this government has already done something about it. 4 or 5 months ago, we've extended the program until the 31st of March, 1987, and we are now looking at a long-term policy. So there is a policy in place. There is a short-term policy in place, but we are looking at a long-term policy, Mr. Speaker, and any municipalities who are having a flooding problem should address the ministry, and we've responded to every municipal concern.
Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the short-term policy is inadequate, and the long-term policy certainly isn't going to help those that are experiencing very critical problems at the present time. Is the minister indicating to me that if municipalities are experiencing above normal costs associated with flooding in the Great Lakes system, that they can make application to your ministry and that you will, in fact, work out some sort of subsidy program to assist those municipalities. Is that what you're saying in terms of an immediate response to a critical problem?
Minister?
Sure. Mr. Speaker, we're doing this daily. We're trying to assist municipalities who are faced with flooding problems. We're doing this every day. And I agree with you that the guidelines are poor. But we inherited these guidelines. Now we're trying to improve them.
New question, the member for Bellwoods.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question for the minister responsible for pension policy, who is also the treasurer, arising out of the answer to order paper question number 335, tabled yesterday, asking for information about surplus pension fund withdrawals from the Pension Commission. The answer indicates that, and I'm quoting, if a plan is in surplus, a pension plan is in surplus, the employer may apply that surplus against the required current service cost without application to the Pension Commission. In other words, companies can rip off the surplus of a pension fund as a substitute for their regular employer contributions. Is it the intention, surely it is not the intention of the government, to allow that additional piece of legalized theft to continue in the Pension Benefits Act?
Treasurer.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member is referring to a situation where a surplus above and beyond the 125% required under the regulations exists, and where additional payments from the company concerned are foregone so that the surplus above that point does not accumulate. I believe that that's the present policy, and as the Premier indicated, and the Honourable Minister has indicated the matter is under review, and we hope to have legislation before the House for consideration.
Supplementary.
So let me get this straight, Mr. Speaker. The government is proposing a pension reform law which does not provide inflation protection, does nothing to end the legalized theft of pension surpluses, fails to protect workers against the kind of rip-offs that my colleague from Hamilton East identified this afternoon, and even the vesting provisions are not retroactive, so that all monies invested up to the end of this year will still be subject in perpetuity to the 10 and 45 rule. Is that your idea of pension reform? Is that the best you can come up with?
Treasurer.
Speaker, I don't know how even the fevered mind of the honourable member could draw that conclusion from my answer, which I thought was rather innocuous. I indicated that we were aware of the situation that the honourable member brought to our attention, that we were concerned about it, reviewing it, and hope to introduce legislation.
The member for Grey Bruce.
Quiet. Mr. Speaker, for the record, I'd like to convey to the Solicitor General, for whom I have the greatest respect, my concern about the fact that we have in local jails up our way taking prisoners who have to go to the hospital or to a funeral, taking them in handcuffs and leg irons. I think it's a system that's very medieval, and we should put a stop to it. And I hope the Solicitor General will have a look at that.
Minister, will you have a look at that?
I was happy to have a look at anything that the honourable member puts forward. But may I just suggest that, again, we must look at such issues as the offence for which a person has been brought into our keeping, and we also try to use common sense and discretion at any time when restraints are needed. But we are always looking.
Supplementary.
Well, the facts behind this, that a young chap in jail, his grandmother was dying. They took him, 2 guards took him to the hospital in handcuffs and leg irons, and he had to shuffle to the bedside and kiss her goodbye with handcuffs on. And I think all of our staffs in the penal system should be aware of there's a sense of decency in everything we do.
I didn't hear a question. New question. The member for Scarborough Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Premier of the province. Mr. Premier, there seems to be a significant difference of opinion between 2 members of your cabinet. In March, It's not unusual. In March, the Minister of Education told the OSSTF Provincial Assembly, "We do not intend to fund private schools." In April, the Solicitor General told the Kingston Whig Standard, and I quote, "I presume we will be providing funding in the private schools in the not-too-distant future." Mr. Premier, would you indicate to the House today which one of your cabinet ministers is speaking for the government?
Mr. Speaker, I'd be happy to do that if you tell me which one of you guys speaks for your party. But let me be very clear. It's very clear, Mr. Speaker. You know, Mr. Speaker, you can imagine the frustrations for a government in a minority situation, attempting in a spirit of generosity to work with all of the parties in this House, trying to accommodate their individual needs and their particular views of issues, to have 17 different views on every single issue from the party opposite, believe me, causes frustrations for the government. But let me say, I want to be very clear, because my colleague to the right, as you know, is not a shrinking violet. He speaks for the government on educational policy. You'll be aware that he's in possession of the Shapiro report. The government is looking at that at the moment. It is not the government's policy at the moment. And if you have any further questions, direct them to my friend beside me.
The member for Scarborough Centre.
Supplemental, Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask the Premier again. On April 28, 1985, you were quoted, sir, in the Toronto Daily Star. And I quote, "The Liberal Party have advocated the establishment of a select committee of the legislature to conduct open and public hearings into the manner in which public funding might be extended to alternative and independent schools. Now that the Shapiro report is tabled, will you now give an undertaking to this House that that committee will be established prior to the spring session?"
Well, Mr. Speaker, as I said, this government is an open government. We're always looking at any good suggestions around. I have no problems with committees examining this or any other subject around here. But I just hope that we can get on with some of the legislative work that we have at hand. And I would ask you to tell your colleagues, if we could avoid this backlog that's developing around here, help us out, get some of the work done, then we can examine some of these problems that we're facing in this country.
New question, the member for Lake Nipigon.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. I have a question for the Solicitor General. The Minister will be aware of the shocking and appalling incident that took place May 16 past, sir. What an elder, Mr. Moses Anderson, was assaulted and badly beaten in the remote and northern reserve of Casablanca Lake. The Minister will be further aware that a number of reported, documented, and serious violent incidents in that reserve has increased from 2 to 19 in less than a year. For 9 years, Mr. Minister, the people of Casablanca have asked you to comply with the most essential of service, which is police protection. And yet in this particular incident, it took people under your ministry, your OPP people, more than 2 days to acquiesce and to make a physical appearance on the reserve. When can we expect that the people of Casablanca Lake will be given the attention and the services they deserve?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the matter of special constables for reserves is one, of course, that is a high priority in the government, as you know, and as the House may well know, we have 132 of those constables at the present time. The matter of funding for these constables is one, of course, that is jointly shared between the federal government and the provincial government, historically and has continued for some time. We have just recently been able to get the federal government to sign the 1985-86 agreement, which is now almost gone by. As late as September the 25th, we met with them on the 86-87. To date, they have not agreed to sign it because they insist on a clause that says if funds are available. That is rather difficult. The matter of Casablanca Lake is the top priority for additional constables, which we are personally committed to as soon as we can receive funding and agreement through the federal government.
Supplementary.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Mr. Minister, I have a letter dated May 29, 1986, and it comes from the office of the great hope and beloved leader, the Premier of the province. And it tells us indeed that, again, in the not-too-distant future, we're about 3 steps short of eternity. You know, the future can last a long, long time when we get letters from people like yourselves. With respect, what is needed is not to compromise with the feds. Let's not blame the Conservatives. Let's not blame the feds. Do your job. You have that mandate. You have that responsibility. Give us police protection.
Once again, I did not hear a question, Mr. Speaker.
Order. New question, the member for Brampton.
Mr. Speaker, as my question is addressed to the Attorney General, Mr. Speaker. As the Attorney General will be well aware, the city of Brampton and the region of Peel is the fastest growing community probably in Canada, has a great need for courtroom facilities. I had an opportunity to attend at these courtroom facilities about 6 months ago with the Assistant Deputy Attorney General. I understand that the Attorney General himself has visited my riding with reference to this matter. I would like to have an update on what steps or where we're at with reference to the additional court space in Brampton for Peel Region.
Well, Mr. Speaker, when we came into office, there was on the list for Peel 2 courtrooms which were required by the district court. That's the estimated value of that is $5 million, which is about a quarter of our budget. So you'll be interested to hear that I went out to Peel County and met the judges, and we found 2 courtrooms that they weren't using. One in the basement of the sheriff's building and the other downtown in the old courthouse. So we're not going to be building those courtrooms because they're not necessary. Now, in the provincial court, there is no doubt that the system is operating at capacity, and as the county grows, and it grows annually in very large amounts, we will have to develop a plan for the medium term. I hope very shortly to be able to announce to the House a program related to courtroom and courthouse construction.
Supplementary.
Mr. Attorney General, as probably one of the conclusions or one of the answers to the problem out there would be to put all of the court facilities together. I'm wondering if the Attorney General would consider in his deliberations the question of taking the, assuming it's agreeable to the Minister of Consumer and Commercial Relations, would be moving the registry office out of the northerly building, locating it somewhere else, and that would provide additional space of some considerable size for further courtrooms without the immediate expenditure of those funds at this time.
Attorney General?
Well, we'll certainly consider that, Mr. Speaker.
New question, the member for Oakville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also have a question for the Attorney General. Mr. Speaker, some 14 months ago, I brought to the Attorney General's attention the severe discrimination that is suffered by citizens living outside metropolitan Toronto by virtue of the fact that they, in dealing with their small claims court system, are less fairly treated than those living inside Metro. As we know, one can process small claims debts up to $3,000 within Metro, and outside Metro that is not available to our citizens. The Attorney General at the time assured me that he was looking into the matter and that he would be taking care of it soon. Can he tell us when he might be taking care of that situation?
I think, Mr. Speaker, to be candid, I said last time when the honourable member asked me that I'd be looking into the matter. I didn't say the rest. I have looked into the matter, and the fact is that the provision of this important service outside metropolitan Toronto is very expensive because it will involve the appointment of a substantial number of new judges to service the work, which is not necessary inside metropolitan Toronto. As a matter of budgetary constraint, we have to look very carefully at programs of this type because they are important, but they have to be weighed carefully against the needs of health care, educational care, and a variety of other services. But that's why we're not building the 2 courtrooms in Brampton, because we found 2 others, and we're trying to be as careful as we can with the taxpayers' money. They pay taxes, and they expect us to provide that kind of careful consideration of need. So I want to let the honourable member know that this is an important request, and we will try and evaluate it carefully as we go along with other budgetary obligations that the government has if it's going to serve the people's interests properly, which we believe we're going to do.
Supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this sounds like a broken record. This is what he said to us 14 months ago. Does the minister not understand that by implementing the higher level outside of Metro, there will be increased revenues to the small claims court system, there will be decreased revenues, savings, in other words, to the higher court system, and further, that in some cities, specifically Hamilton, Ottawa, and Niagara, there are already judges available to hear these cases, and that there wouldn't be any significant increase in cost in those areas and perhaps some others.
The honourable member, I expect when we have a supplementary question that the honourable member will ask a different question than the first question. He simply repeated the first question, and in the last 35 seconds or so, my answer to it hasn't changed. May I point out what the honourable member knows, if he can remember back to the estimates process, that in order to carry this program beyond Metropolitan Toronto, we would have to appoint approximately 17 new judges to do this work. With those appointments, we would have to make appropriate additional appointments in the court system. We would have to create more courtrooms, and the project is not a simple or cheap one to undertake. There are other competing demands on the taxpayers' dollars, and we are trying to evaluate this one and put it in priority against those other important demands.
New question, the member for Ottawa Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Labour. In April of this year, workers were injured by exposure to coal tar contamination at the Lees Avenue site in Ottawa, and I'd like to know, on behalf of those workers and the interested public in Ottawa, where is the health and safety inspection report?
Minister?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to have to check into whether an additional report was done, but I believe, Mr. Speaker, that the honourable member may find that much of the matter that concerns the Lees Avenue site is a problem which falls under the jurisdiction of my colleague, the Minister of the Environment. But I will, Mr. Speaker, take the matter under advisement and check, and whatever our responsibility is in the matter, I can assure the honourable member that if reports needed to be done by our ministry as opposed to the Ministry of the Environment, they were done, and I'll check into it and share the results with her.
That completes the allotted time for question period. Order. I've had a number of notes from members complaining about the heat in this chamber today. I think they certainly have a right to make some comment. It is extremely high. However, I must inform members that some time ago the fire alarms were going and we cleared the galleries. Nothing in particular took place. However, there might have been some factor that attributed to the trouble we're having with the cool air that's supposed to be coming into the chamber. I hope it'll be redirected by tomorrow. Put the member for Nipissing.
Speaker, yesterday I had, on October 15th, raised the issue of the delay in answering questions. On October 14th, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Gillies, in response to a statement, had made reference to questions concerning computer contracts which were promised by October the 10th. When Mr. Gillies raised that, the Honourable House Leader for the Opposition held a stack of questions up, as it does not appear in Hansard, but at that point where he held a stack of answers up and said, here they are. Well, Mr. Speaker, they were not in there. These involved serious matters of computer contracts that were let by the government, under serious concern and allegations during committee hearings this summer, and I'd like to know when the stonewalling and cover-up is going to cease. You've had lots of time to vet the facts and table the answers on those contracts.
Order. Maybe the member could control himself, not get too hot under the collar on the hot temperatures that we have in here. I hope that the government House Leader will take note of the request regarding the outstanding questions, as he has, I'm sure, in the past.
Certainly take a note, and I have heard the question asked before, and I will respond as soon as I possibly can, and I will be sure that the ministers responsible.
Order. The debate is completed.